Welcome to Let's Talk, where Spokane Talks hosts seek out and discuss the latest on a variety of interesting topics to Spokane and North Idaho. Here's today's host, Mike Fitzsimmons.
Welcome to this edition of Let's Talk. It's an election year, and we're talking to candidates. And on this edition, we have Dave Lucas, who's a candidate in the 3rd Legislative District, seeking a representative position number 2. The incumbent is Tim Ormsby in that position. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
You're a Republican running in the 3rd District. That by itself, and folks who've watched politics in the Spokane area, whoa, that's an uphill battle for the guy.
It is more challenging, but the issues that I think that are important to me and that I think that are important to the 3rd District really aren't a partisan issue. We are really plagued by a lot of this property crime that's going on. There's a significant push for taxes increase, which is not going to help those struggling in the 3rd District. And the current representative, Tim Ormsby, that's been there, has failed to work on either of those issues, and in fact has actually at times opposed them to the loss of Spokane. So I don't think they're necessarily a partisan issue. So yes, it is more challenging, but most of the issues, and when I get a chance to talk to people as I doorbell, I find that they are really open to that and many times are able to get past the initial label of being a Republican, the moniker.
You've knocked on 10,000 doors over there.
Yeah, so we've been.
So what are they telling you when you get into conversations with people who live in the 3rd? What are they saying?
So they've got a couple things that concern them. Obviously, property crime is one of the top issues most people have. And then quality of life, which really for most of them translates, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to deal with these increasing expenses? Whether it's increasing taxes, increasing cost of living, no effort is being made towards affordable housing. Prices are going up. Our availability is really low. I mean, we've got 1% availability in rentals and only 4% in sales. So it is very tight market right now. It's a great market for a landlord or a seller, but it's very challenging for somebody trying to get in or somebody trying to pay their bills.
Well, of course, that fluctuates. There are times when the exact opposite was the case just a few years ago. That does fluctuate. But at this point, obviously, it's a difficult environment for folks on fixed incomes if they're senior citizens and folks who have not seen significant increases in their wages at this particular point. They're nervous about that. And that doesn't carry a Republican or Democratic label. That just carries a home fiscal management label, is all that is.
They want somebody who cares for them. I think somebody who's willing to reach out to listen. I mean, that's one of the things I think that I certainly believe I do a wonderful job on. My experience in the Marine Corps, the leadership experience of dealing with both my Marines, but also foreign experience, being able to build coalitions in foreign countries under very hostile circumstances. So trying to do that here, I think, is an opportunity that has not been taken. I mean, whether it's talking to the Democrats or the Independents or the Republicans, or even just encouraging those folks that have felt really removed from the process and don't feel vested at all, and really trying to encourage them to get involved, to vote, to participate, to work with their neighborhood council, to work with their neighborhood block watch, but to get involved. And that's been that translates across all borders.
Dave has mentioned the United States Marine Corps. He spent a career there and has some very interesting accomplishments there. Let's look at that just a little bit in terms of your qualifications. You had some pretty high-level leadership positions.
Yeah, so I retired as a lieutenant colonel after a little over 21 years and have traveled, worked all over the world, had several combat deployments. My last deployment was I was in charge of the Afghan National Security Force development. Basically all of the Army, police, Army in southern Afghanistan. The Helmand province was the area that the Marine Corps was responsible for. And so I worked on all the training teams and advisors, worked for my office, and basically we supervised them, supervised the overall campaign plan, worked to basically build the coalitions. A lot of meetings and discussions, similar to politics actually in a lot of ways, and a lot of sitting and having tea and dinner with various leaders across the country to build a coalition and to rebuild their country and for them to take the leadership role and the security of their country.
Since you left the military, you left the Marine Corps, and came to Spokane, you have been involved in a great many community service organizations and have taken leadership roles.
I have. So I've had the opportunity to really be involved in some wonderful programs. I work on a committee out at the VA, combination of veterans to advise the staff and the leadership there. As an Eagle Scout, one of the first things I did when I got to Spokane was get involved with the local scouting community, took and built the National Eagle Scout Association committee for our area, which includes both Washington and Idaho, to build that program and advise and mentor new Eagle Scouts, as well as bring in some of the senior Eagle Scouts that are in the community, and have since then taken several additional roles in scouting. I'm actually the district chair for Spokane, the town proper, of the the scouting area region there, and then have worked continuously in the neighborhood council, which is really what got me involved in politics. Working significantly on different roles in the neighborhood council. I was last term elected as the chairman, so the leader for our neighborhood council, and through working on several efforts that we were trying to put forward to make the community safer, both advocating to the mayor and the city council for more police officers and traffic officers, trying to work on some of those issues for both the property crime as well as traffic. And as we worked on those, found out that our current representative, Tim Ormsby, had actually blocked or was the committee chair of a proposal, second year in a row, that the bill had been moved forward to bring back probation officers for those nonviolent criminals here in Spokane that were involved in auto theft and property crime, which is the predominant folks that we struggle with on a daily basis. And so since 2008, 2009, when that program was lost across the state, there's been a consistent rise in property crime, not only in Spokane, but across the state. But we have been one of the more troubled communities across the state.
And the 3rd District has been a hotbed.
It has been. It's really suffered.
Sad, but
that.
It is. It's the truth.
And as I go door to door and talk to people, it is not uncommon to talk to folks that have been impacted in one way or another. Their car's been broken into, their house has been robbed, their garage has been burgled. I mean, you name it, they've had problems, whether it's stuff stolen off their porch. And so it's really frustrating. I mean, it's frustrating to me. It was frustrating, really frustrating as a neighborhood council chair, working with the neighborhood councils, the city council, to move this legislation forward, and then to find out that the person who was supposed to represent us here in town was the one who could have moved it to the floor for a vote and instead didn't. And he has several different reasons why he says he didn't. But at the end of the day, he did not represent Spokane as we've elected him to do.
In a House of Representatives that his party dominated.
Yes.
Whereas, so he would not have encountered a tremendous amount of resistance in that. Now, what?
And it was a bipartisan bill approved from our local senators.
Yeah.
Andy Billing, our 3rd District senator, was one of the co-sponsors.
Right.
And so it moved from the Senate on a bipartisan basis to the Budget Committee, where he is the chair and says that he is able to make things happen.
But now, Dave, if you were to win this office,
yes,
you're going to go into a House of Representatives dominated by the Democrats.
Yes.
How are you going to be able to make any difference in this?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a great coalition builder. As I go door to door and I talk to folks, half the folks I talk to are Democrats. So as I talk with them, many of them, as we discuss the issues and realize that first, I'm an honest, upfront person. I'm going to stick to my word, and I'm going to do the best I can to represent the folks in the 3rd District and to really do what I can to make the life better here in town. I mean, those things that we mentioned earlier, just some of the economic development and these added taxes that are being pushed and being advocated on behalf are going to impact them significantly.
The Democrats in the House want more taxes. In fact, they were very upset that $4 billion worth of taxes the governor wanted and others didn't make it in the last session. So they're going to come back, and they're going to come back with, if they have both the House and the Senate, with a whole lot more ability to deliver those taxes. What will you be able to do to protect the citizens of the 3rd District?
Well, one of the things I think is going door to door within the legislature. People always used to joke when I worked in the Marine Corps and I would suddenly show up at their desk, whether it was at the Pentagon or Headquarters Marine Corps office or some outlaying office, and they'd be like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "Well, I want to sort this out." "Well, why didn't you send me an email?" "Well, because I'm here, I got in my car, or I came across the building or whatever it was to come have a discussion." And we would work through it. Some people didn't like that because they wanted to be able to just use the bureaucracy as a shield to continue with whatever they were doing or to avoid moving forward whatever effort we might be pushing, but go and sit with them and work that. So I have a great experience of doing that already, sitting with folks, whether it's in our country or other countries, to build a coalition, to work forward, to work through those issues. And it's not a Republican or a Democratic issue. It's a people issue. What are we doing for the people? Why are we not representing them better? Why are we doing, and that's what really, the other thing that really just ticked me off about, that kind of led to me jumping in as a first-time candidate, is the hypocrisy. Many of these legislators say, we're doing the best we can, we're looking out for you. But then on the flip side, they turn and look at the folks that are their big donors. We'll make sure we take care of that. We'll make sure that happens for you. And not those things that are most necessary to the citizens, the people.
But that happens on both sides of the aisle. The Republicans do that. The Democrats do that. I mean, I've been a student of politics for almost 50 years, been watching it and reporting on it for a long, long time, and I see it on both stripes.
Yes.
It's not just the Democrats, not just the Republicans. They all do that sort of thing, and there needs to be a cultural change. Olympia is a hotbed for that sort of thing. There's an awful lot of hypocrisy in Olympia, and you are going to find yourself with that kind of an attitude. A bit of an outsider, folks are going to find you, somewhat of a threat.
Well, I think we need to, as you mentioned it, we need to change the culture, and that's one of the things I think coming from the military. You bring a different perspective as a servant leader. You are not you don't just get to wave a wand over people because you're in charge. You are working for their best interests, and sometimes they are painful decisions. I mean, certainly in combat, you have to make very difficult, painful decisions, but they are always decisions that are in the best interest of the people that you are responsible for, not your self-serving. Self-serving interests, there is no room for that. And so that's one of the other advantages I'm a first-time candidate. I'm not beholden to anybody. I mean, go look at the PDC. Mm-hmm. All of my donors are local donors from Spokane, or I shouldn't say the majority. I have some family and friends that from different places in the country, Marines, and that have donated. So I do have some.
But you don't have any fat cats and sugar daddies who are saying, here, you get this office, here's what I want from you.
Whereas if you go and look at Tim's PDC, he has one donor from the community, David Green, who's running for treasurer. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of his money, all the rest, is from big corporate donors. And many of them aren't even in Spokane. So when the majority of his donors aren't even here in the community that he says he represents, who does he really represent?
Is that message clear to the voters when you talk with them?
I don't think so.
Do they get that? Do they understand that?
When I talk to them, I think people recognize that. And I encourage people to go look. I mean, I am all about facts and honesty and transparency and go Washington Public Disclosure Commission. Click on there. It will give you every legislator in the legislation for the state or any state position you want. Yes. Look it up. All the information is there. It's not just me making up a story. It is all available to anybody who has a computer.
Let's go back to the constituents that you seek to serve. All right. These are folks in this district. We already mentioned that they're in a economic atmosphere that is one of the worst in the state. Literally, they are blue-collar workers who are trying their best to make ends meet. They are family people. They are folks who are just salt of the earth. They're the kinds of people who made this country, and they have not heavy expectations. They just simply want to be left alone to achieve some of the dreams they have, and they want government to stay out of their way to a certain extent. Are you going to be able to deliver that, and why hasn't that been delivered yet?
I think there's a couple things on that. One is when the legislatures start looking at what they're going to tax and what they're going to do, and Tim has even said that. You can go back and look at some of his interviews in the past. Likes to have more taxes because it allows him more flexibility to do things with the budget. But it's not his money. It's the taxpayers' money.
He's the Appropriations Committee chair.
Yeah.
And so he writes the budget, basically, for the House. And insofar as that's the case, obviously, I mean, the Speaker of the House, Frank Chop, out of Seattle, has simply said, we want to do the following things, and we don't have enough money, even though they've gotten more money per capita as a result of a good economy than they've seen in years, and yet they want more yet. And they want to continue to build that budget. And he has been essentially a enabler for that.
Right, and you're exact. You brought it up. So the budget has increased organically through economic growth by 14%. We had the largest budget last year in history.
Yeah.
And yet, what comes out of that? We had an excess, a $700 million excess. And instead of working for the best will of the people and either giving that money back or applying it to the rainy day fund as the Constitution and the way the legislation is written that they're supposed to, that the people have voted in, they decided to manipulate the system so they could spend it, and as you mentioned, go for more money. So they're not even able to work with, how many people, I would love to know how many people got a 14% raise last year.
In the 3rd district, you'd be sure nobody did.
But yet the government got a 14% raise and now wants more. And it's just, it's unconscionable. It is a total, again, the hypocrisy to me is unbelievable. We're doing what we can for you, but we got a 14% raise, but we want more.
But yet, when we go back to these folks, where they live and what their lives are about, they're not students of politics.
Right.
They are trying to make it, trying to get by. They got a lot of things on their plate, and these things are not the things they spend their night watching, the political talk shows and what have you. They are hard-working folk. They've got, repairs to make on the property, lawns to mow, kids to raise, all that kind of stuff. And we haven't got time for this sort of thing.
Right.
So they are not tuned into these little details you're talking about, which are not little at all. They're quite sizable, and the impact is really escapes many of these folks. How do you bring the message to them without sounding like, well, I'm just after the Democrats, and you appear to be somebody who's just trying to sell them a yarn, but the reality of it is that it's affecting them, it's hurting them. The things that they hoped the government would do for them hasn't been done, and they still believe that it would be if they vote Democratic. They still believe that.
Which is one of the things as I talk to people, and really when you talk to them about their values and the things that are important to them, trying to make rent next month, and they realize that Tim is an example. He's been there for 15 years. And nothing has changed. It's still one of the poorest districts in the state, and it has the poorest zip code. But yet, we continue down this path like it's going to get better or it's going to change, and every year. And that, again, the hypocrisy to that to me is amazing. And again, just being a Marine, being a leader, being a scout leader, being somebody who recognizes that what your first and foremost obligation should be looking after those that you're responsible for. And even the state, what's the number one responsibility? Public safety. And yet that continues to fall in the priority list of, well, we will get to that. And so it's been 2 years on this legislation for the supervision bill. And then it's, well, we'll work on it again next year. But that's your number one responsibility, to protect the people.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you consider yourself to be somewhat conservative, but
Yes.
You've got a rather broader worldview than that.
I think so.
But he clearly is liberal. There's no question about that. You have, on the property crime bill, you have indicated that you think that nonviolent property crime offenders shouldn't be incarcerated, that they should be managed by a probation system and not put the impact on our jail. And we've talked to Ozzie Knezovich, for example, and his response is, look, this jail is just plain overcrowded. We can't handle this anymore.
Right.
But nobody seems to want to fix it.
There's no room. So that's an impractical piece to address first. And then you get to a very practical piece of, is it worth the $130 a day that taxpayers are going to pay to put this person in jail? And so it's not a single item. And just putting the supervision bill in place is not going to solve all of our problems. But it is a start. And it clearly, there's a great article from the Inlander in 2016 that talks about how we got here as a state, and going back to when the recession hit and we lost across the state, and how just clearly across the state that issue has continued to rise as a problem. So that's only one item, the supervision. We certainly need to address the jail. That is something that I've talked with both the sheriff and the prosecutor about. That's a challenge, And in addition, looking at the laws. How are which obviously the legislature writes, what are the laws that address those? You get to a point where you essentially, each next crime is a free crime because you have reached the sentencing threshold. And so the criminals know that. So there is not an incentive to say, well, I better not rob that next house because that's going to really, I'm now in serious hot water if I get caught. So we need to look at that. And that's not something that I unilaterally are going to be able to do. Back to the coalition piece. We need to work as a group to come up with the right answer, because it's not the right answer for Dave Lucas. It needs to be the right answer for the people of Washington, the people of Spokane. And so that needs to be something that we work collectively, and not Republican or Democrat, but as representatives to the people that we work on that, because we owe them better. I mean, that is one of the things that just, again, I think has been lost, where that sense of duty, that sense of servant leader, of you owe a better product than you're delivering.
You are seeking to represent a district that has been a strong supporter of organized labor. Labor unions, a lot of your constituents belong to them, and both public and private sector. It's a blue-collar district. If there ever was one, it's one.
Yes.
And labor has not been particularly favorable to, organized labor has not been favorable to Republican candidates in the 3rd District, historically speaking. What's your message to working people, working families, with respect to why you would not be a threat to their expectations?
Because that is certainly not an objective I have, to go out and go after any group. As I mentioned before, I want to represent all of the 3rd District, all of Spokane, and I want to make sure that everybody is able to get a great job, whether you're union or non-union. And I've had meetings with both, have been endorsed by the AGC, which has both union and non-union contractors in there, and have talked with both and have been recognized that I want to see good economic development. If you would like to be in a union, that, again, this is America. You should have the freedom to choose that. And I don't have a problem with that. And I'm not going out to try to go after any party, even the Democratic Party. I really want to work across the legislature and across with diverse groups that may not have had a seat at the table in the past, and bring them in and hear what their perspective is, because they're going to bring great ideas and great perspective that have not been addressed previously and deserve and need to be included in any decision that's made. So it does represent all of the people of Spokane's 3rd District, but also Washington.
Got about a minute left.
Okay.
Quick answers. Why you? Why would it be Dave Lucas?
I think there's 3 things. I have the experience, the passion, and the desire to do the right thing for the people of Spokane and work on the things that are most needed in the 3rd District.
All right. That's a good, succinct answer. Appreciate it. Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you. Thank you for the time today.
He's Dave Lucas, and he is running for 3rd District representative in the 2nd position against the incumbent Tim Ormsby. I'm Mike Fitzsimmons, and that's this edition of Let's Talk.
Thank you.
Let's Talk is produced in Spokane, Washington by Spokane Talks Media, which is solely responsible for its content. Ask a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksMedia.com. We wish you a great day